is Alexandra from Fiberbound, and today I thought I'd show you how I do my 1x1 rib. Now, I have talked about this on my podcast before, but I have had a few questions since we started the Anchors Obsessed Cow, and I thought it might be handy to show you a visual of how I do the setup round and then how I ensure that my 1x1 rib looks nice and neat. Okay, so when we look at 1x1 rib, we can see that obviously you have knit and purls next to each other. Unfortunately, the way that a rib is structured, or the way that a purl is structured, means that the purl stitches are usually a little bit wider than the knit stitches, which is why you may see that your 1x1 rib doesn't always look as neat as your stockinette, for example, or even the 2x2 rib. I do find my 2x2 rib always looks much better than my 1x1 rib, unless I use this technique. So let's get started, and I'll show you what I do to start the setup round. So you will knit your stitches as normal. Now, I am a continental knitter, so I hold my yarn in my left hand and I pick with my right hand. If you're an English style knitter, it works the same way. I'm sorry, I don't know how to tension yarn very well in my left hand, but essentially you would do the same action and knit that way. Now, I am going to unknit that because that does not feel natural to me at all. And let's bring that stitch back over so that I can make sure that my tension is consistent. You will notice before we get started that the stitches are all oriented in the same way, with the front leg being slightly in front of the back leg. Let's see if I can show you this well. You see that they're facing that way. What we are aiming to do with this technique is to make sure that our purl stitches are actually facing the other way, which means that when you knit them, so we want them to look like this, which means that when you knit them, you will be using less yarn and your tension tends to remain a little bit more consistent for the ribbing section. So let's get started. I'll just knit this first stitch. And then when I go to purl, I'll pop my needle in the front loop as always, bring my yarn to the front as always, but instead of wrapping around anti-clockwise like this, what I do for this first setup round is pop the needle in front and then pick that yarn in a clockwise direction around my needle. Now you'll see this is my knit stitch, it's facing the original right way, and then this is my purl stitch, which is facing the opposite way. Now I'll show you that again. So we'll knit the next one and then we'll purl and bring that yarn through under there and reorientate that stitch. And the next one, knit and purl. And knit and purl, and just work that way until you complete one full round of your ribbing. Can you see how they're facing different ways? So the ones that are orientated with the front leg in front are the knit stitches. The one that is behind are the purl stitches that we've made. And we'll just continue along and knit and purl and knit and purl. So I will finish this round and I will meet you back at the start to show you how we work the rest of the rib rows. So we've completed our first setup row, and I just wanted to clarify that this is all knit in the round. Now I realize I've been saying row and round interchangeably, but this tutorial is specifically for knitting in the round using 1x1 rib. So once we've done the setup row, you will see that you have these lovely little V's on your needles as the stitches for the purl stitch have been reorientated and they are no longer facing the way that you would normally see your knitting. Now if we go and just purl those into the front loop again, what we would do is we would twist that stitch. So we need to do something a little bit different on subsequent rounds, and I'll show you that now. So obviously we're still knitting as per normal. The knit stitch does not change at all, but here we are at a purl stitch. I'll just bring that a bit closer. You'll see the front leg is behind and the back leg is in front now, and we always work into the leg that is at the front of our knitting in this technique. So I think that's something worth remembering, just always making sure you're working into the leg that's at the front. So you do that with your knit stitches, which are at the front, and your purl stitches. Okay, so beforehand we went in through the front loop and we picked that way. This time, now that they're reoriented, we will go in through the back loop, but again pull it through in the same direction, so you keep that stitch oriented the opposite way. So I'll show you that again. So again, we're knitting through the front loop of the knit stitch because it is at the front of the needle, and we'll knit that as normal. And then for the purl stitch, we'll, oopsies, sorry, it's hard to do this when you're looking overhead through the camera viewfinder. You'll go in through the back loop, and instead of purling as normal, again you'll purl by picking it towards the back. I'll show you again. So we knit as normal and we purl backwards. Knit as normal and purl. And you'll continue this process all the way around your knitting for as many rows as your ribbing requires. Or rounds, sorry. As many rounds as your knitting requires. So just do a few more stitches just so you can slow this down or pause it if you need to. I always find these sort of techniques a little hard to explain without showing them. And I am a very visual learner as well, so if I'm able to view a tutorial and really slow it down and pause it and replay, it just helps me to put the technique into practice a lot easier. Now I'll just show you here the last couple of rounds we've done. So you'll see the two V's here. There's 1 and 2. That is the start of our rib for this current section. And you're still seeing that the little V's are there for the correctly oriented knit stitches and the backwards oriented purl stitches. So that's how your knitting should look as you're progressing. Okay. So as you can see, the knitting is very consistent, or the rib is very consistent on those knit stitches, which is why I love this technique. I'm someone who is a little particular about how my tension looks in knitting, and I like to make sure I find the neatest, I guess, way to do things, and have found this technique to be a bit of a game changer. And where I used to really avoid 1x1 rib in projects, I have really started to embrace 1x1 rib because it does look very beautiful when it's done in this manner. But if you have any questions at all, please feel free to comment down below. If there's anything that I haven't been clear about, please let me know. I'm very happy to chat with you in the comments. And if there are any other tutorials that you would like to see, please let me know. I'm always happy to provide some further guidance on techniques that I feel very comfortable with and to share my knowledge with you. One thing that I probably should say though is you might be wondering how we knit once the ribbing stops. So once you complete your ribbing section, you would then need to knit through the back loop of the purl stitches in order to orientate them the correct way. So I'll just show you that quickly here. So you would knit that, and let's pretend we're on a knit row now. We would knit it that way. Does that make sense? So you would knit that and then knit through the back loop. Always remembering to work on the stitch that, or the leg that is facing you first in this method. So, and then knit through the back loop. So I'll obviously unknit those, but what you can see now with those 4 or 5 stitches that I've just worked is that they're now orientated the correct way, which allows you to work your stockinette in the round if that is what your pattern calls for after your ribbing. Okay, so I'll leave that there, I'll fix that later. But I want to thank you for watching today. If you like this video, please click the like button. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I make a lot of videos about my knitting. I have a week or a fortnightly podcast that I share all of my projects, my acquisitions, and I share skills and techniques that I have found to work well for me. So please feel free to like and subscribe. Hit that alarm bell if you would like to be notified when I upload my next episode or tutorial. Happy knitting everyone, and I hope this has been a helpful tutorial for you. Bye!